Nigel Farage has always been known as a man who rarely bends, a man who built his entire image on holding firm to his beliefs, and a man who often repeated that he would never change his mind once he had taken a stand. For years, his followers admired him for this trait, and even his critics admitted that one thing was certain: Nigel Farage never backed down. But now everything has changed. Out of nowhere, without warning, he has done something no one expected. He has made a move so shocking that it has left both supporters and all opponents speechless. The man who spent decades insisting that his way was the only way has just taken a U-turn that no one saw coming. This isn't a small shift. This isn't a minor adjustment. This is a dramatic reversal that shakes the foundation of everything he once stood for. The announcement came like lightning on a clear day, catching everyone off guard. In the political world, surprises are common, but this one felt different. It felt like a crack running through the very core of Farage's identity. The moment the news spread, conversations began everywhere, from online discussions to late-night talks among analysts, from radio shows to television debates. Everyone wanted to know the same thing: why now and why this? It wasn't just what he said that mattered. It was the fact that he, of all people, was the one saying it. Imagine following a man for years, believing in his convictions, and suddenly watching him step back and admit that he is changing direction. It feels like the ground shifting beneath your feet. For many of his longtime supporters, the shock was not just about the words spoken, but about the trust they had built around his image. He had always been the voice that spoke against change, and now he was the one leading it. The ripple effect of this moment is massive, because it is not only about Nigel Farage as an individual, it is about what this means for the larger political climate, and what it reveals about the times we are living in. The shock value lies not only in the announcement, but in the timing. It came when no one was prepared, when discussions were headed in a different direction, and when most people had already assumed that Farage would never alter his course. That sudden twist has created waves that will not calm down anytime soon. For some, it feels like betrayal. For others, it feels like a smart and necessary move. But either way, it feels like history taking a sudden turn. This is why people cannot stop talking about it, why reactions continue to pour in, and why this moment will be remembered as one of the most surprising chapters in his career. For a man who built his reputation on refusing to compromise, this sudden U-turn raises more questions than answers. What could push someone like Farage to change so dramatically? Was it pressure? Was it strategy? Or was it something personal? These questions are now at the heart of every debate. As this story unfolds, it is clear that this is not just a headline. It is a turning point that may alter the path of his political journey forever. To understand the weight of this announcement, we need to step back and look at the man behind it. Nigel Farage is not just another politician. He has been a symbol of defiance, a figure who shaped debates and influenced decisions far beyond his official positions. Over the years, he positioned himself as the voice of people who felt ignored, frustrated, or unheard. He was never shy about making bold statements, never hesitant to stand against the mainstream, and always confident that his path was the right one. That confidence made him popular among many and controversial among others, but either way, it made him impossible to ignore. His career was built on being consistent, on never shifting his ground. He carried himself as someone who could withstand criticism, mockery, and even hostility while staying true to the line he had drawn in the sand. This is why his recent reversal is not just another story in politics. It is a complete rewriting of his own narrative. People followed him because he stood still while the world changed. And now, with this single move, he has shown that even the most stubborn voices can bend. Over time, Farage developed a reputation for being the man who could withstand storms. When others gave in to pressure, he stood tall. When others doubted their positions, he doubled down. Supporters saw him as a warrior who would never walk away from his beliefs. That image gave him strength, influence, and a following that stayed loyal even when critics dismissed him. His role in shaping debates around national identity, sovereignty, and political independence is undeniable. Whether one admired him or disagreed with him, one thing was clear: he knew how to command attention, and he thrived in the spotlight. But every strong image carries the risk of being shattered. When someone builds their entire reputation on never changing, a sudden change can hit harder than anything else. This is exactly what has happened now. The very thing that made him stand out, the unshakable consistency, has been replaced by a surprising shift. That is why reactions have been so intense. It is not just about the words he spoke in this announcement, but about the weight of his past words, repeated countless times, that now seem to contradict his present. This backdrop explains why the shock runs so deep. If this were any other politician, the news might not have made such an impact. Politicians change their minds all the time, and people are used to seeing them adjust their positions when it benefits them. But Nigel Farage was different, or at least that is what people believed. His sudden turn makes it clear that no one, not even the most stubborn leader, is immune to the pressures of time, context, and circumstance. And it raises a bigger question. If someone like Farage can change, then what else in politics might change next? The turning point came quietly, almost too quietly for someone who has spent years making noise in politics. There was no grand stage, no crowded rally, no dramatic fanfare to signal what was about to happen. Instead, the announcement slipped into the public space almost like a whisper, but the weight of the words carried an echo loud enough to shake the foundations of Nigel Farage's image. In a simple video, a message appeared that would mark a decisive break from his past. It was short, but it was enough. The moment the words were out, the story was no longer his alone. It belonged to the public, to the media, and to history. Farage has always been someone who knows how to capture attention. He never needed elaborate settings to make his voice heard. His speeches, his tone, and his confidence often carried more impact than any stage could provide. This time was no different, except for the substance of what he said. In the past, people listened to hear him reaffirm what they already knew he believed. But this time, people leaned closer because what he said was not a repetition of the old. It was something entirely new. That made the moment electrifying. It was not just another speech. It was a rupture in the story of a man who once claimed to be unshakable. As the video spread, people pressed replay to make sure they had heard correctly. Was this really Nigel Farage saying these words? Was this really the same man who had spent years promising that he would never turn back? The more they watched, the clearer it became. Yes, he had said it, and he had meant it. For those who had followed him for years, the weight of those words felt almost surreal. They were not just sentences, they were confessions of change. And in politics, confession carries both power and danger. The announcement moment is powerful not because of its length, but because of its context. It represents a break from the years of certainty that defined him. Every time he had stood in front of a microphone before, he had projected a sense of permanence, like someone carving their beliefs into stone. Now, in just a few lines, that stone seemed to crack. The simplicity of the delivery made the impact sharper. There was no distraction, no attempt to soften the blow. It was direct, and it forced everyone who heard it to face the reality that Farage had turned a corner. Reactions were immediate and intense. Some people laughed in disbelief, unable to process that this man was actually reversing his stance. Others felt betrayed, like loyal supporters suddenly abandoned on a battlefield. But there were also those who saw the move as bold and clever, a sign that Farage was not stuck in the past, but able to adapt to the present. The very same announcement carried different meanings for different audiences. That is the nature of dramatic reversals. They divide as much as they unite, they inspire as much as they anger. And in this case, the divide was clear within hours of the video being posted. The moment also highlighted something larger about politics in general. No leader, no matter how strong their image, is beyond the reach of change. Words that once seemed permanent can be undone in seconds. This is what makes politics so unpredictable, and why announcements like this carry so much weight. They remind the public that even the most determined figures are, at the end of the day, human beings who can shift their ground. For Farage, this shift was not just another political tactic. It was a rewriting of his role in the story of modern politics. When we look back, the announcement will stand out as more than just a speech. It will be remembered as the moment when Nigel Farage, the man known for his unyielding stance, proved that even the most immovable image can turn. It will be remembered not just for what was said, but for the way it redefined the man who said it. The shock of the announcement was only the beginning. Once the initial disbelief began to fade, people started asking the deeper questions. What exactly had changed? And how far did this U-turn go? Breaking down Nigel Farage's shift means looking closely at both the past and the present, because the weight of this reversal lies in the contrast between what he once declared and what he is saying now. For years, Farage defined himself through strong lines, bold statements, and absolute certainty. He was never vague, never hesitant, and never soft in his messaging. If he opposed something, he opposed it with full force. If he supported something, he championed it with the same energy. That is why this reversal feels so extraordinary, because it appears to cut through the very identity he built. To understand the depth of this U-turn, we must remember the words he used in the past. Time and again, Farage said he would never change, never compromise, and never back down from his core beliefs. These statements were repeated across speeches, interviews, and rallies. They became more than just political positions. They became promises etched into the public imagination. Supporters clung to those promises as proof of his reliability. Critics mocked them, but still acknowledged that Farage meant what he said. Now, however, those promises appear to stand in direct contradiction to his new message. The U-turn is not simply about policy, it is about trust, memory, and the collision between past convictions and present choices. Breaking it down further, this reversal can be seen in two layers. The first is the obvious surface layer, the words themselves. In his announcement, Farage stated clearly that his position had shifted, that what he once rejected he is now willing to consider, or that what he once believed is no longer the case. These are straightforward admissions, easy to spot and impossible to deny. But beneath this surface lies the second, deeper layer, the symbolism of change. For someone whose brand was built on being unmovable, admitting change sends a powerful message that goes beyond the specifics of policy. It tells the world that even the strongest walls can bend, and even the loudest voices can soften. The U-turn also raises questions about motivation. What pushed him to this point? Was it pressure from political allies? Was it the shifting mood of the public? Or was it personal reflection that forced him to reconsider his past? Each possibility carries a different meaning. If it was political pressure, then perhaps this move is about strategy rather than honesty. If it was public opinion, then maybe Farage is less independent than he always claimed to be. And if it was personal reflection, then this could be seen as a rare moment of vulnerability from a man who seldom admits doubt. Breaking down the U-turn means exploring all these angles, because the truth may lie in a mix of them. Another aspect of the reversal is its timing. Timing in politics is never accidental, and the fact that this announcement came now, when debates are heated and the political climate is unpredictable, cannot be ignored. It suggests calculation, as though Farage picked this moment deliberately to maximise impact. But timing can also work against him, because by choosing such a moment, he invites critics to accuse him of opportunism. The U-turn is therefore not only about what was said, but about when it was said, and how that timing shapes the interpretation of his words. The most important part of breaking down this shift is understanding what it means for his identity going forward. Farage can no longer present himself as the man who never changes. That image has been cracked, and whether he likes it or not, the public will now see him differently. For some, that might make him seem more human, more flexible, and more relatable. For others, it might make him seem weaker, less trustworthy, and less consistent. The same reversal that might bring him new supporters could also cost him old ones. The U-turn has created a crossroads where his future is uncertain, and the direction he takes from here will decide whether this moment is remembered as a smart strategy or a fatal mistake. Ultimately, the U-turn is not just about Nigel Farage changing his words. It is about a political figure stepping into unfamiliar territory. For decades, he thrived by being the man who stood against the tide. Now, for the first time, he has allowed the tide to carry him in a different direction. Breaking down the U-turn reveals that it is not only an adjustment of policy, but a transformation of character. And in politics, character is everything. The announcement may have lasted only a few minutes, but the echoes of its meaning will last for years. The announcement spread across the public space like wildfire, and within minutes, the ripple effect turned into a storm. Reactions poured in from every corner. Supporters, critics, commentators, and ordinary viewers, all scrambling to make sense of what they had just heard. The first wave was confusion, as many refused to believe that Nigel Farage had truly taken such a sharp turn. Social media was flooded with disbelief, with people posting short, stunned remarks like, "Did he really just say that?" or "This has to be a misquote." But as the video replayed and the words became impossible to deny, the confusion gave way to shock, and the shock gave way to heated debates. Supporters who had long admired Farage found themselves divided. For some, the move was a bitter pill to swallow. They had built their loyalty on the idea that he was unshakable, that he would never betray the principles he had repeated over and over again. For these followers, the U-turn felt like betrayal, a break in trust that could never be repaired. They questioned whether the man they believed in had abandoned them for personal gain, and whether his promises had ever meant anything at all. The emotional weight of that betrayal was heavy, and it was voiced in posts, calls to radio shows, and passionate arguments on forums. On the other side, there were supporters who welcomed the change. They argued that the world has changed, circumstances have shifted, and leaders must adapt to remain relevant. For them, Farage's reversal was not a sign of weakness, but a sign of intelligence. They saw it as proof that he was not blind to reality and that he could take bold steps, even if it meant challenging his own history. These voices defended him fiercely, insisting that only a strong leader can admit when it's time to pivot. The divide among his base created a storm of debate, with loyalty being tested in real time. The media wasted no time in amplifying the story. Headlines screamed of a massive U-turn and a shock reversal, framing the moment as one of the most significant surprises in recent political memory. News panels dissected every word of the announcement, playing clips on repeat and analysing tone, timing, and intent. Commentators who had once criticised Farage for being inflexible now found themselves praising his ability to adapt, while others accused him of hypocrisy and opportunism. The media thrives on conflict, and in this story, conflict was everywhere. Every article, every broadcast, and every commentary added more fuel to the fire, ensuring that the announcement remained at the centre of public conversation. Beyond the media, the ripple effect reached everyday conversations. Families argued over dinner tables, friends debated in cafes, and workplaces buzzed with discussions. People who had never paid much attention to Farage before were suddenly drawn into the story, curious about why such a well-known figure would reverse his position so dramatically. This wider engagement is what made the moment so powerful. It was no longer just about politics, but about trust, leadership, and the human capacity to change. The reactions also highlighted the polarization of our times. In a world where opinions are often divided into extremes, Farage's U-turn became another flashpoint. For some, it was the ultimate example of a politician selling out. For others, it was a refreshing reminder that even the most stubborn leaders can grow. The conversation was not calm or balanced. It was loud, passionate, and filled with certainty on both sides. And in that noise, Farage's announcement took on a life of its own, larger than the man himself. What makes the reaction stage so crucial is that it shows how the meaning of an event is shaped not just by the person who creates it, but by the people who interpret it. Farage may have spoken only a few words, but those words multiplied into millions of interpretations. Each supporter, each critic, and each observer added their own perspective, twisting the moment into something bigger than he could control. The public and the media together turned the U-turn into a defining event, ensuring that it would not be forgotten or brushed aside. By the time the first day ended, it was clear that the reaction was not temporary. This was not a story that would fade quickly. It had lodged itself firmly into the public conversation, sparking arguments that would